Okay, we started.
Okay, so the first question asks, how much government intrusion into daily life is acceptable? Consider the examples of security cameras and airport searches by the TSA. Is the reduction in personal freedom worth the benefits that these policies provide to society? Do other nations view the trade-offs in a similar way? So does anybody have some thoughts on that?
So, I mean, I can go first. I was actually thinking about this a lot because I travel a lot for work. So I'm always going to airports and TSA. And as like frustrating as it is, like have to take off your shoes, like take off your belt, like sweaters, and go through a metal detector that has radiation and all these other things. That I think the offset of that is we have planes crash into our buildings, or we have terrorists bringing some type of weapons, or stuff coming through our borders. I'm not sure if you guys have watched. It's on Netflix. I was actually watching this recently. It's called Border Wars. And it's basically, it's kind of I wouldn't say it's a reality show, but it's a documentary that really analyzes the different ports of entry into our country. So from like the port in Mexico to the port in Canada, or air travel. And it surprises me all the stuff that they basically catch on people because of these like metal detectors, or just security lines, from drugs to money. So it's like, all right, at one hand, you're giving up your, in a way, freedoms, but at the other hand, it's like you're also protecting your freedom, and this is not only your freedom, but the freedom of your peers and our citizens as well. So just kind of my take on it.
It's like you're giving up a little bit of freedom, but you're gaining your safety.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think about the new body scanners as opposed to the old, more simple metal detectors?
Yeah.
Do you think that the radiation and all that is more intrusive, or do you think that that's a benefit as well?
I mean, I guess from a health perspective, I wouldn't really. I guess from a health perspective, it sucks, but I do think they're a lot more efficient than the other ones, just because they just crank out people. Like you go in and within like a second or two, it tells you if you need a pat down or not. So I do think that that's really effective. But again, it's the opportunity cost of what comes with it.
Are the new ones, are those, I don't travel very much, but are those the ones that you have to go in and you put your hands up and it does we just went to Illinois for a funeral in June, and it was my last time I flew, they didn't have those. You just walk through the things, and I had a flannel shirt tied around my waist because I always get cold on the airplane, and we were leaving at like midnight and getting there at like 7, 8 in the morning. And the first lady said, "Oh yeah, you're fine." Da da da. And then I got a huge line. I got to the front of the line. My boyfriend's behind me, and the guy at the scanner told me, "You can't have that. You have to go put that back in your thing." So I had to get out of line to go all the way back, and I was like, "This is just frustrating. It's just a flannel shirt." But on the other hand, it's like, I want to make sure I get to where I'm at, so I guess I'll just get right back into line. Mm-hmm. But it was amazing, like it's that detailed, like you can't have a sweater or anything in your hand. You actually have to have, nothing extra.
Oh, wow. Anyone else have gone through one of those? I haven't.
Yeah, I've gone through them quite a few times, just on various occasions, and it's interesting, and if you've seen the images that they get from that, that's what's kind of creepy, actually, is that, like, if you look it up, it is creepy it's your body, and there's been some stories of TSA members holding on to those photos and using Photoshop to reverse the way that they do a negative. So they reverse it, that way they can actually, like, see your face and, like, see who you are. And then I didn't realize all the radiation stuff until this prompt when I was looking it up. I hadn't really thought about all the radiation and, I don't know, possible health side effects from that. So after reading, I didn't think it was that big of a deal until like this prompt and reading about it this week. I was like, oh, this is kind of invasive. But again, it is a trade-off between walking through a scanner and possibly, terrorists ending up on the plane. So
yeah,
I would still choose to walk through the scanner.
I also think it's weird, like the different, when you go to different airports, how thorough some are and some aren't. We flew to Washington, D.C. probably, oh gosh, 6 years ago maybe. And when I left here, I actually had a little pocket knife in my purse that I've always just carried in my purse, never thought about it. I flew out of LAX with it with no problems. Didn't even remember it was in there. No one said anything to me. And it's a nice sized pocket knife. You know, I always have it. I put one in my pocket for when I'm out with the horses and stuff like that. But flying back, the agent in Washington, D.C. caught it. And I was like, oh, I forgot that was in here. And he goes, did you fly here with that? I said, yeah, I flew here with that in there, you know? And he's like, wow, you shouldn't have been able to get on the plane. So, that's also scary too, is we have all these security measures, but it all goes down to like whoever's looking at the x-rays, either your body or in your purse or your backpack or whatever your carry-on is.
Yeah. What about security cameras that are everywhere?
It was funny. I actually just turned on my iPad to read the first part of the question because I actually did some research on security cameras, and so I find that less intrusive. I think most of the time security cameras are in a public place, anyways. Then obviously, you going through a metal detector, and they basically taking a full picture of your body. But one of the things that came up, and I'm not sure if you guys are you guys Amazon Prime members or just shop on Amazon. So I live in Sacramento, and one of the new things that Amazon is doing in Sacramento is basically they'll come to your house and put in like a keypad, and basically that allows them, instead of leaving basically your package outside, it allows the driver, the mailman, whatever they are from Amazon, to enter your house. And just drop off the package right inside. So I find that interesting. But the whole point is like you basically get alerted. I watched the whole video on it. You get alerted. So when the person that's entering your house, you actually seen him. There's a camera pointing at him. And then the camera doesn't stop till he shuts the door and leaves. So it's basically also cameras are being used for more in an efficient way by, these Fortune 500 companies. And so it's like, I guess I'd prefer a camera over a body TSA detector.
Yes. I think positive about security cameras. I think it makes me feel more safe, at home or anywhere that you're going, because if something does happen, it can't be recorded. I think my husband just purchased this little mirror that he puts on the cars. He's going to be installing that, like a camera that takes, if you're in an accident, it'll catch the person and hit you, because my daughter was in a hit and run accident about a year ago, and the guy just left her stranded in the freeway. So, I mean, to me, security cameras in one way or another, security wise or safety wise, I feel more secure with them.
I think as long as they're used in the right manner or the right way. I work at Cal State San Bernardino, and you would be surprised at how many cameras there are all over that campus. From the minute you drive across the intersection entering campus, there's cameras. I mean, there's tons. You go into dispatch and there's just a huge wall of all the screens. But we had cameras installed in the basement of the library, and one of the directors wanted one right outside one of the doors that are down there for staff members. And usually the stream goes directly to dispatch. Nobody else has access to it, Well, he wanted access to it, and we couldn't figure out like why he wanted access. And finally it came out what he wanted to do is he wanted to keep an eye on his employees. So when they said they needed to go to the bathroom and they left the office to go into the hall to go to the bathroom, he could watch and verify that's where they were going, and he could time them. So as soon as that came out, we were like, no, we restricted. It went back to being restricted exactly to dispatch, and nobody else had access. So it's like, if it's being used for the right way, I think it's good, but I think there's the perpetuality to use it in a way that they're not meant to be used, which is scary.
So then how do you think that could be avoided in terms of, the TSA, security cameras, all those things? Like, how do you avoid them being used in the wrong way?
I don't know if you can. Like you were saying with the people, the TSA people taking the pictures of the x-rays, and I think as long as humans are involved at any point, you can't really guarantee anything, which is scary.
Very, yeah, that's true.
I mean, think of all the cases where people have put cameras in the bathrooms and,
Well, we don't have any of the bathrooms in school, right? University?
No. I'm just talking about people have, put little cameras in the vents or, weird stuff.
That's actually true. I didn't even think of the opposite of like cameras can be used like kind of a spy world. It's like they can be used against you and, put in hidden compartments or your house, or the bathroom is probably prime location for, people who are bad up here. But I guess, yeah, that's very true. Or like hidden cameras or everything just hidden. It feels like you can hide anything in any type of clothing material or anything now. So.
What about the last part of the question? It asks, do other nations view the trade-offs in a similar way in terms of, security features and the government intrusion, so to speak, into our daily lives? Like, how do other nations view those trade-offs?
So when I was doing research on this question, one of the facts that really impressed me was that London has more cameras than it has people. And basically it's like no matter where you look at in London, there's a camera. So I find that funny that, and I mean, it might be because, it's a big tourism place and, they've been hit by terrorist acts in the past, but I find that amazing that I think it's like twice the amount of cameras than there's like per capita.
Wow.
Yeah, they are everywhere.
But I think in terms of the TSA one, I do think that countries around the world are more, what's the word? Like countries around the world basically buy into that idea because it's a safety net basically for them as well. It's like the same way the U.S. doesn't want any terrorists to enter our borders. I think other countries would say, we want to probably abide by those same rules and regulations that help the U.S. in a way keep out terrorists or foreign terrorists.
Yeah, I read an interesting article on something, and I don't know how accurate it was, but it was saying that like people in other countries in like the Middle East, that they actually kind of mock that the United States is so scared of, all these threats and like bad things happening, that we're so scared of it that we have to do all these things. And I thought that was interesting because a lot of places over there like don't have security cameras. Yeah, I think that is very different based on the culture of where you're at. And London has a lot. They're more similar to the United States in that. But then other places don't have hardly anything.
Yeah. I was reading, I just looked up something because I remember reading it the other day. So Beijing has the top. They're number one, it says. They have 400,000 cameras that have been installed, and 70,000 of them have been installed since 2010. Then it goes London. Then it goes Chicago, which I don't find that surprising with the rate out there. And then Houston, and then New York, which is kind of interesting that 3 of the top 5 are in the United States.
I can definitely see Chicago and New York. I'm not sure with Houston, but I guess I've never been, so.
And do you think that that's correlated to crime prevention? Like, are they actually being effective?
I think they're being effective in crime prevention. Well, not prevention, but catching the criminals. And
Well, it says,
if you see someone that's going to commit a crime and they see a camera, it intimidates them not to do it.
Sure.
it says in the thing from Homeland Security that Houston is considered a sanctuary city and it has a huge illegal alien population. And so that is the main reason there are so many cameras there.
That's interesting.
I thought so too. I'm like,
And then I wonder who's monitoring the cameras. Like, is it a local police thing?
It doesn't say. It just says that Immigration Enforcement Program is who. It's the head of the DHS, is what they're saying. But also another interesting, because we're talking about who watches, who has control. But New York, the majority of their cameras are owned by private companies, not by the government. Huh.
So do they contract out, basically? Is that what I'm reading?
It just says that mostly that is estimated there are more than 4,450 cameras in the city of New York, mostly owned by private companies. So it's kind of like when you say who's looking at them. Well, yeah, that's the scary one.
A related but kind of different thing. What about wiretapping? Or like going through people's emails?
Oh, wiretapping. I know that was a big, huge, issue. Was it the Brazil? There was some wiretapping, the president of Brazil, and sometime last year, I remember reading an article about that. So the United States was wiretapping their conversations and, invaded their privacy. She didn't come to one of the meetings that they were having in New York. I think it was the General Assembly. I can't remember if it was exactly that one, but yeah, that was like invading the, other country's privacy, the NSA.
Yeah. See, my thought is,
okay, or is that too much?
I'm sorry?
Is that okay? Like, are we?
I don't think so. I mean,
or that's not okay.
Yeah, to me, that's it's, I guess that's a touchy issue right there.
So, I think the original intention is to wielding goodwill, and those for like the NSA who basically used it to eavesdrop on terrorists or, people that they're after. But I think once it got into the wrong hands, it's being used against us. But I think the original intention was like, something that's going to be good for our country, and it's more from a national security perspective. But I think after the whole Edward Snowden thing, I think it really opened up and shined the light on, cyber warfare, cyber crime that our country, and in my opinion, I mean, all the countries are doing. I think we're hearing more about Russia now just because that's what's been on the news. But I guess I find it interesting as well. Or I guess my overall interpretation, I think that it is something that, if used right, is something good. But I think once it starts being used against you, I think that's when the government needs to step in. But I think once it gets into the wrong hands, I mean, what's really our opportunity to get out of it too, especially with cybercrime.
I like the point that you brought up about Snowden, because I recall when all that started. I mean, that really opened my eyes into, you're being kind of watched, and they're listening to you. So, I mean, you have to watch the way you are outside of your home.
I always just figure, for me, I'm like, I have nothing to hide. If you want to waste your time going through my email or going through my phone or whatever, but it's kind of interesting. I work for the state, and so some of us have our emails downloaded into our phone. I'm a regular I work 7 to 4, but I'm a regular 7 to 4 employee. I don't work weekends unless, overtime and all that kind of stuff. But I did download my email, my work email, to my phone. I'm a staff member, but I'm a student, so I get both. And I recently just got told that if I reply to, say, a work email about something and it becomes an issue and there's a lawsuit or something, something happens that I actually replied to an email or did something, because I run the 911 system on campus. If something like that happens, they could actually confiscate my personal cell phone because I downloaded my email. So you as students, if you download your email to your personal phone and something happens and there's a lawsuit and you're somehow even unknowingly involved in it, they can confiscate your phone.
Yeah.
Isn't that, I was like, no way, I'm taking that off.
I learned that in the MIS class that they can do that. So a lot of people were like, okay, I don't want, then you need to issue me a phone for work and keep it completely separate, work from my personal. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I did hear that in class.
It's funny. So I also work for the government, and my work reimburses me for my phone. And every month, like I like basically give them like basically my bill statement, and they'll reimburse me. And when I sign, basically saying that this was my phone, at the bottom there's actually like a small statement now that reads something similar that, since we're paying for it, or since you're doing work related activity on it, that in a case, I think it reads like in case of a lawsuit or something, the university has full rights to access your device.
But I mean, they pay. I think they pay for it. You understand it's a work phone.
Yeah.
I think it's kind of different. Like for us, we don't get reimbursed. All the cell phones, if you have a state cell phone, our department just pays for it, and you're issued a phone. That's your phone for however long you have it. But for a personal phone, I was like, oh man, that's a lot. There goes all my pictures,
But do you think that that's a motivating factor to, like a deterrent for people to do bad things if they know that their phone with all their pictures and other things is going to be confiscated?
I don't know. For me, it was, like I said, I work 7 to 4. I'm not an exempt employee, meaning I work after hours, whatever. But if I got an email on my phone, I would reply to it if it was work, especially, we just had the great shakeout and I was a part of that or whatever. I've had the chief of police call me when I'm at a vet appointment, and I'm like, how did you get my personal phone number? But now, instead of me being proactive and like getting to my stuff, even when I'm not at work, I'm less likely now to reply to a work email when I'm outside my working hours, because I don't want, because I do work with the chief of police and stuff. And so if he's named in a lawsuit and he's emailed me about something about it, there goes my phone, so I think it's for me, it's making it less likely that I would be proactive and work more compared to just work my regular schedule, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah.
You don't think about it until, you have conversations like this. I use my phone for work also. Don't really even think if something were to happen with a boss or a coworker that they could do that. I've never even thought about it that far, because I really wouldn't want to have 2 phones. I mean, I have enough with just one.
Yeah.
Too many emails already, addresses. Yeah.
And it's interesting because, I've worked at Cal State for 18 years, but in the telecom department for 12. And this is the first time in 12 years, we do the billing, we give out the cell phones, when a new person comes in or whatever. This is the first time any of us have ever even heard that.
I wonder how current, how new it is. Because like I said, I heard about it in the spring when I had that MIS class. So I wonder how long that's been happening.
Who told you this, Linnell?
It's actually the person that admins our cell phone accounts.
Oh, really?
And then the VP of telecommunications.
Yeah, we had a conversation in class about it because everybody was shocked and we're like, "What do you mean? You mean if this happens, they can take my phone?" She's like, "Yes." And our professor was telling us all that, and we're like, "Who?" Well, like you said, Linnell, like you say, it's like I didn't care. I was like, okay, whatever. But some people were like, really, like, it's night class, and they're like, wait, what? I need more information about this. Okay.
I think if you look at it from like a historical perspective, I mean, none of this really existed until after 9/11. I think that's what really, like, that was really the soundboard and the foundation for all these, cyber warfare, cyber crime, and TSA and all the. I think actually TSA didn't even exist before 9/11. TSA was invented after, because my parents were actually telling me that before it was had their own security, and how it's like federally ran. So I think, it's obviously something big had to happen, and I wonder what's the next thing. I always take a look at that. It's like, right, I'm sure there's going to be new inventions that have to do with like privacy concerns and TSA, and them having more access to us. And so I always wonder like what's really next after this.
Yeah, it's true what you're saying. One of the articles I was reading about the cameras was the Boston bombings. After that happened, they got some really expensive cameras that, that are very almost almost infrared, but the way the mobility of the people all around the city of Boston, because people were so scared after what happened, and I mean, just even locally, San Bernardino, what happened, a couple of years ago, that changed the way we are around here. I know that I used to work at that county building in Riverside, but when it happened, I was no longer there. But my old coworker, my previous coworker, said, yeah, they're putting metal detectors for the first time. And it's like, even, right here next to home, it's happening also because of things that are happening all around our surroundings. Things are changing. The way we do daily lives, every morning going into work, you have to go through a metal detector now. It's like, wow. Not just the airplanes.
It'll be interesting to see also how it changes with hotels, like after the Vegas thing. Like are we going to be walking through metal detectors to go into a hotel now? Like things like that the policies come after something bad happens. Yeah. Like that same thing with the TSA. Like those were all results of something negative happening, and them policymakers feeling like, they can make a difference and prevent it in the future by setting things up.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. We're going there in December. And, the venue that happened at just opened in May. They haven't even been open 6 months, because we were actually there in May when it opened. And so it will be interesting because the Mandalay Bay is my boyfriend's favorite place to gamble. He always wins money there. So I'm sure we'll be going there, but it'll be interesting to see because the volume of people that come in and out of a casino out there is just outrageous. And with your luggage, golf clubs, all that stuff, I don't see how a metal detector or anything like that is going to work.
Right, yeah, because you're out there for leisure. You take a lot of stuff that you wouldn't take to work.
Yes.
Or on a flight. Business flight.
I had heard an interesting talk by Mr. Wynn, who owns the Wynn hotels.
Oh, okay.
And he was talking about the security policies that they have for their hotel, and it's pretty extensive. And it's really interesting. But they train, so they do have some of those metal detector type things there, where not everybody has to walk through them, but they do have some protocols in place. And then they also have behavioral things of how to spot, potential people who are going to have issues there and cause trouble type of a thing. So now it'll be interesting to see, okay, so they have some degree of it, but are they going to enhance it even more with extra security cameras and extra metal detectors just to stay at a hotel or just to go somewhere for leisure and to gamble? Most people going on vacation aren't thinking that way.
Mm-hmm.
So you'll have to observe that, and when you go and
we're going to a big event every December. They have the Nationals Finals Rodeo, so it's anybody that's competed in a rodeo and over the world comes there to find out who's the best. And so we do it's at the Thomas Mack Arena, so it will be interesting. It's an enclosed arena, but there's thousands and thousands of people there. And I was telling my boyfriend, I'm like, well, it's enclosed. You do actually have to go through metal detectors. They've always had metal detectors, so it feels like it'd be a more secure area. And my boyfriend's like, nah, if somebody wants to do something like that, they'll just wait for us all to exit, because you have to exit out of one front area. There's no other exits, So I'm like, well, thanks a lot,
Yeah.
But you do, all these open people. I have a friend that got shot twice there last in Vegas, and she's struggling, but she's attempting to go to the Luke Bryant concert this weekend.
Wow.
She doesn't know how good she'll be able to. She got hit in the hip and hit in the leg. It went through her calf. It actually went through somebody else before it hit her. So that way it did less damage on her, actually. But I just couldn't imagine going out to a big concert, less than a month, outdoors. I'm sure they're going to have metal detectors.
The week after, I went to the Depeche Mode concert out in Chula Vista open air, and everybody was like, everybody I went with, it's like, oh, it's open. The good thing it's all kind of wilderness out there. I'm like, well, there aren't too many buildings around here. You know, it kind of made you feel a little bit safer, but it's like, it's kind of sad that you're, you know, that you feel that way. You know, that's what, and that's probably why many of us will feel okay with the, you know, metal detectors, cameras, everything to give us that sense of more safety and their surroundings wherever we go, whether it's work or pleasure.
Yeah, I know her friends are like, come on, come on. And she's like, wait a second. One, you weren't there. Two, you weren't shot. You know, you weren't carried off. And her friend went through her coming down. It went through her rib cage down and out her hip. And then that bullet went into her leg. And so, you know, she, you know, trying to carry her friend as she's shot because, you know, bullets are still going and stuff. She's like, it's different. People like, we're already like kind of past it. Oh, it happened. We're sad, but we're back to living our day-to-day lives. But those that were there or that were hit, it's a different trauma kind of thing. And so she's more like, hey, wand everybody, put cameras everywhere. You know, you're outside. There's no privacy, you know, kind of thing.
Yeah.
How are we on time?
We are exactly 30 minutes right now.
Perfect. So I'll start on the second one. So did you all get to watch the video?
Yeah.
Yes.
So obviously it has to deal with, I think the notion of the video really was that sexual assault is happening on campuses, but I think this video looked at some of the causes and what's really influencing sexual assault. And I think what I took out of it's binge drinking, and I think just drinking in general. And I think that's really part of the equation. You know, obviously there's a lot of moving parts, but drinking in general has, in terms of actions that people who drink and especially binge drink, according to the video, they end up participating or being sexually assaulted or vice versa. So the first question is, let me fix this a lot. So out of just binge drinking, I think sexual assault, I'm guessing you all think that it's a problem.
Oh yes, definitely. I think so.
Have any of you all, I guess we're all grad students, but did we all finish our undergrad a long time ago? Or because I know I finished several years ago.
About 4 or 5 years ago.
Yeah.
I finished 2 years ago.
Yeah. So this might be more relevant to you, Megan and Consuelo. Did you see that, you know, in your day-to-day lives when you were in undergrad? I don't know if you guys were like involved in sororities or fraternities or.
The only experience I had is that they started doing those mandatory, you know, meetings and videos about sexual assaults. So, you know, and they actually put a hold on your account if you didn't watch them. So that's pretty much. I mean, I'm too old to be going to those things. I know my son did when he went to UCR. He's already graduated, and he one of the stories he told me was, you know, really sad. It's like, what? You don't think about it, but you know, him and his two friends are the ones that actually carried the girl out and helped her and everything. And it's like it's hard to think that, you know, somebody that this happened to. It's very sad, but it happens.
Yeah. In my university that I graduated from, they had a no tolerance rule if you were under 21, but it was pretty loosely enforced if there was like a big party going on. It was only enforced if they like caught you having alcohol in your room. And then it was kind of like a 3 strikes thing where if they catch you multiple times, then they put a hold on your account or until you do like some sort of training. But it was pretty loose, and the fraternities and the sororities definitely had the reputation and for binge drinking and having rowdy parties, and I mean that's what it was. So I think it was a huge problem because there's a lot of peer pressure going on. You have a lot of students who are on their own for the first time and navigating, you know, that freedom that they have And I think the biggest thing is awareness for everybody of like, what do you do if you see something happening? Because if you're intoxicated, like, you probably shouldn't be, but then there's so many people around you for most of the time, like at these big parties and things. Usually it's not just like a 2-person thing, it's usually a bigger party. So educating everybody in hopes of somebody being smart enough and somebody being coherent to respond to a situation and give them those things to look out for when it is an issue. And we never got training on that. We got a don't binge drink kind of like seminar, and don't do it, and if you're under 21 it's illegal, and all this stuff, but we never were trained on how do you respond when you're in a situation and you see somebody else, potentially leading them into a bad situation. And so I think that's kind of what needs to happen.
Where did you go for your undergrad?
I was at University of Redlands.
Oh, okay.
Well, Cal State, we have in the student union upstairs, we have what we call is the pub. And they serve alcohol. And it used to just be open. You could go in and drink whatever. There was no limit. There was no restrictions, before class, after class, during class, whatever, as long as you're up there. Well, due to some of the
There's restrictions there?
There's restrictions now due to some of the sororities and fraternities. There is a 2-drink limit. Yes, and that actually my coworker was in the sorority. That is the reason behind the restriction. But yeah, it happened about 3 years ago now. So yeah, it got a little bit out of control. They were putting their drinks inside of their water bottles and inside of different containers, and they're walking out. So now it is served to you in a clear plastic glass, and you only get 2.
How do they enforce that?
I don't know, because you know what? I've worked there 18 years. I've never been up there to have a drink. Yeah. So I don't actually know how they enforce it. Because our Coyote IDs now have the scanners on the back, so maybe they scan them, and I don't know. I just was told, she told me that, a bunch of her sorority sisters got in trouble, and then all of a sudden there was some enforcement.
Wow.
Yeah.
But that could be good that somebody else is watching out for that.
Yes.
Like, the bartenders and the staff of, okay, assuming that they're all students who go here, having some sort of accountability.
It's a very small, very, very small area. I don't know, you could probably fit maybe 50 people in it. Like it's a small little area, and you have to go up to get the drink. So you have to go up to the counter. So maybe that's an easier way for them to, to keep an eye on that. But I'm involved in the risk and safety committee that meets quarterly. And so we get a list of like how many cars were stolen on campus, how many thefts. Right now there's a huge thing with people plugging their cell phones in and then going to do stuff and coming back and their cell phone's gone because they've left it. Wow. But I have not, in the last 3 years since I've been on this committee, I have not heard one problem with drinking in the dorms or having to call, emergency services. There was one issue with a student propping a door open, and then some homeless people got in, to try to sleep the night and stuff. But I haven't heard anything on our campus regarding any binge drinking or anything like that, which I think is interesting.
Yeah, that is interesting. Do you think that has to do with the amount of off-campus students?
Well, we do. I mean, we are a commuter college, but we have 8 dorm buildings on our side of the campus. Across the street, we have kind of like apartment dorms that just went in about 4 years ago, and we just had a new set of dorms open up this last quarter. So because we're trying to make it to the freshmen's have to stay, so that way they're more likely to stay in college. So we are transitioning to that, but we still have quite a few, and we're doing another one right now that's going to have 400 rooms. So, I mean, we do have quite a few, but I'm just surprised I haven't heard, there hasn't been any reports of anything.
Is there, I guess it's a push to, I think to your point, make it more of a community-based school where like, more people, it's basically like those southern schools where people live and do everything on campus. But maybe that's been the reason why the campus has been immune to these types of problems, because there isn't that opportunity to really drink on campus excessively. And especially, I think it's still a dry campus technically, if I remember correctly. So I think overall, like, people can't drink in the dorms, and it's like a violation.
Well, then that would kind of answer a question that we've had. I live in a small community, about 100 houses, and then we're not even 2 miles from UCR. And when we first moved here 10 years ago, there could have been maybe one, house that was rented to UCR students. Now we're like at a dozen, and I'm like, we don't have meetings every couple of months, and it's under control, but it wasn't. It was very bad about 5 years ago. I mean, they'd have big parties here, and because we're really on a very rural area, and there was no lights, and I guess word got out, and students started renting houses over here. But the community got together, and we got to know the sheriff very well. And, it got under control, but that would make sense how you're saying that they're so much stricter at the university that they are going out, a mile, 2 miles away from the university in order to do the big parties, which, I mean, as a community, we're okay for them to have, their graduation parties. We're not going to go out there, don't have a graduation party, but don't be having parties every month, and not allowing us to sleep with your loud music and rowdiness. There is a limit. And we have contacts with the UCR. We just take pictures of the people with their license, and they do get in trouble if we report them. Or it's not an HOA, but it's a community group that gets together and they report them. But I just analyze it. I'm gonna tell them about that. I'm like, that's why they're coming, because they're getting stricter in campus for the drinking, and they're going outside into the communities, because the UCR, all around UCR, it's pretty much built out. There's homes all around it. So there's a lot of homes that are rented out.
So the second part of the question asks, what operational measures and policy instruments would you use in developing a policy to manage this issue? So I'll go first on this one. So I think there's two different issues. I think there's one which is binge drinking, and the other one which is sexual assault. And I think sexual assault is really, in my opinion, we've done a better job at controlling sexual assault through like Title IX and, gender equity offices on campuses. But I don't think we've really paid much attention to the binge drinking. And although I do think some institutions have kind of shed a spotlight on it, I don't think there's really policies in place, because I do feel like it's harder to control binge drinking than it is sexual assault. So I think there are immediate consequences with sexual assault versus binge drinking. It's your actions not necessarily affecting other people right away, but down the road they can. So I think from an institution perspective, I think it would be hard for us to get involved in basically free actions of other people until there's an actual incident. So I think that's been the main reason why I don't think there's really been a big push, because I don't think universities are really feeling the stretch, or just sexual assault. They feel it right away. It's like there's a police report, or, there's X, Y, and Z that's done immediately after somebody's sexually assaulted.
Right.
But I can't find that balance of what's the school's role versus what's your role as a private citizen.
And I thought it was interesting in the video. They discussed that it's not a new issue. That they've had issues with binge drinking for
Was it the
a really
90s?
long time. Is that what they said?
Started increasing in the 90s is what they said.
Yeah, so this isn't, it's not old, but it's also not new. So it is kind of interesting that there isn't a model out there showing the solution and the balance between like how to create a policy to address some binge drinking. But sexual assault, I think that's kind of is there when you do these things and trainings and have these harsh penalties for it. and have programs where victims can come, and even if they were drinking or, you know, using substances, that they can still report it and not be penalized for the drinking aspect of it. So those things are in place, and maybe that's a model that's more well developed as opposed to one for binge drinking.
Do you have anything to add, Consuelo?
Well, I mean, basically what you guys both stated about it being legal and illegal. Obviously, you know, rape is not legal and drinking is. So I think that young people, as it was stated earlier, that live at home and it's their first time out of home, and, you know, they may not be 21, but they probably more than likely meet friends that are 21 and can legally obtain alcohol. And, you know, they feel like they're free and they can drink.
What do you think about like the lower drinking age in other countries, like where it is 16 or 18? Do you think that prevents binge drinking, especially for when you're in your 20s and in college, or does it not make as much of a difference?
Personally, I could have a lot of data on that because, you know, I go to Mexico all the time, and I mean, my daughter, when she turned 18, she went to Mexico because it's, you know, drinking age is 18 over there. And it's, in my opinion, it doesn't make a difference because I think it starts at home, you know, and the way you bring up your children, you tell them, you know, don't drink and drive. If you're going to go party, I'll go pick you up, you know, give me a call. And I don't see, you know, family in Mexico in comparison, you know, to my nieces and nephews from over there or here. There really isn't much of a difference in that manner. The difference I see, obviously, is that the stricter laws here, you know, in DUI over there, they're not very strict with the, you know, drinking and driving. But the aspect about the age, I personally, being 50 years old and seeing it from, you know, different aspects, it's very similar. I mean, everybody, you know, when they go to a party, they drink.
I agree. I got married very young to a military person, and I was always just amazed that at 18 you could sign up and go fight a war, or, you know, be involved in 9/11 and go to Iraq and all that stuff, but you can't come home and buy a beer, you know? So I was always like,
Right.
So I'm like, if you could defend our country, what's, you know, but you can't come home and, you know, I don't see, I think if it was changed to 18, I don't think it'd be that big of a difference. But again, I think it all starts at home, you know, and how you teach your children and what you expose them to. And, you know, you could smoke, you know, you could go to war, but you can't buy a drink.
Have you ever thought, I think over the years, especially, and I think medical marijuana or marijuana in general, it's more like socially acceptable now. And I think it's like in some culture, I wouldn't say some cultures, but I think in higher education and college campus, I think it's like, it's peer pressure and people peer pressure each other. And I think it creates this culture of we need to drink to be cool or whatever. Do you think that's a problem, especially throughout those campuses, especially like down in the South, where it's really a college atmosphere and people live and breathe and eat and whatever you want to call it on their campus?
I think like you're talking kind of like peer pressure.
Yeah, and,
surroundings. Yeah,
and it's like more socially acceptable, and I think it's more like people are just more open about it versus prior. Like people would try to hide it. Now people just don't care. In my opinion, I think people are just really resilient and just open to, you know, these are my actions, so be it.
Well, I think it could be peer pressure, and I think it could also be, you know, they're away from home or supervision or whatever, and if they've never done it before, they don't know how to regulate themselves, so they don't know how to just have a drink or two and kind of understand, you know, what their own personal, I guess. You know, my daughter is 18. She just turned she's 21. She just turned 21. But I was okay with her having some of my wine. I mean, I drink maybe once a month, you know, if that, but I was okay with her, if we were having a party at the house, whatever, and she wanted to try it. And then she realized what she didn't like, and, she drank a beer and had a bad hangover in the morning. And she was like, oh, never doing that again, So it's like if they do it at home and you could regulate it and ensure they're okay and stuff, aside from first time at college, they've never had a drink before, and their friends are like, oh, it's good, have a shot of this and have a shot of that, and they have no experience with it. I think you're more apt to go overboard when you don't know than if you know.
So I think to that point, so Consuelo, I think you brought up a good point where it's just your opinion is that a lower drinking age won't necessarily reduce binge drinking. So a couple years ago, I actually did a presentation on the difference between all these ages, and every country has a different age. I think there's a country in Africa which is 16, and these scientists and field researchers basically found that it actually does reduce it according to what data, because people from an early age have this perceived conception that they're basically allowed to do this. It's like you're a kid when you're told not to, you're basically going to do it. And I see that all the time in my nieces and nephews. But there's data showed that countries that had a lower drinking age had actually there was less binge drinking or alcohol people with over drinking in that country. So I do find that weird, because I'm also from Mexico, and my parents are from Mexico, and I can see of a culture where a lower drinking age actually does lead to more deaths and so on. So, but in some countries, it actually seems, according to data, that there is it has helped lower the amount that people drink.
Yeah, it's now that I'm recalling, my daughter's married to a German, and they go 2-3 times a year to Germany. And we just had a conversation earlier this year. The drinking age for beer is 16 in Germany. Mm-hmm. So they can drink, and she literally told me that beer is cheaper in Germany than water.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so and so kids, they drink it, and it's normal to them. So they don't drink to get drunk. I mean, obviously they do get drunk on weekends, getting together, but they have a different sense of looking at way of drinking beer, whereas the discussion today of binging, that they don't seldom do that.
It's almost like it's not taboo over there. It's like they're not getting away with something, or got to have as much as we can before somebody finds out, kind of thing. It's an acceptable thing, so it's not
So are we all kind of on the same page of thinking about it that way, Juan? I was a little confused. Do you think that, allowing them 16 to 18 years old, like in other countries, it reduces binge drinking, or?
So I think the general consensus, I think that it's hard to form a policy around it. Okay. Dictate people's actions. But I think a consensus that we can all agree on is maybe education is a way to go. It's really informing them of the effects of, this is, if you do X, Y, and Z, this is what happens. And I think similar with alcohol, if you binge drink, these are some of the actions that you can, basically go on. And one of them is sexual assault, or, DUI, or, drinking and driving. So I hope I kind of wrapped up that section pretty well. So the last question is, what do you perceive as the root and proximate causes for binge drinking in the United States?
I think kind of it was talked about earlier, but particularly in the college atmosphere, the peer pressure is a big one. I don't necessarily know if that's a root cause. I feel like it's kind of hard to come up with a root cause to binge drinking, in my opinion, because everybody drinks for a variety of reasons. But I think that a big problem in the age of 20s is the peer pressure aspect.
Yeah. So I literally just typed in on Google binge drinking in the world, and one of the articles that came up was basically a lot of binge drinking has started from problems at home and people not having a mental kind of stable environment. So I find that interesting, but I think more and more that I think about it, I think that's very true. I think when people are dissatisfied at home, which is where they spend most of their time, other than work, I do think that people try to, in a way, kind of do that blackout and try to like get away from home, and their way of getting out of that environment is, I think, results in binge drinking. I think just being an alcoholic in general.
I have a friend of mine that works at the Fox Theater. I don't know if you guys, it's in downtown Riverside.
Mhm.
They have concerts and plays, and they always are like,
Beautiful.
they have, yes. Well, she just posted last weekend. She was just telling on Facebook just a story about a girl that had passed out in the bathroom, and they couldn't get her to open the stall door. And she was trying to get, trying to figure out, call somebody, Well, another customer was in there and saw what was going on, and she actually laid on the floor to talk to the girl to try to get her to wake up. Couldn't get her to wake up. The other customer or patron there actually crawled into the stall, reached up and unlocked the door so that they could open it and, help the lady. And I had asked her, because I saw this question, I asked her and I said, does this happen a lot? And she says it happens at least once a month. Once, maybe twice a month, about something like this happening in the women's restroom. And the women are just so drunk that they pass out or throwing up or whatever. And I asked her, I said, are they young? Are they younger girls? She said no. She said that she would estimate the average age to be in their 30s.
Wow.
Yeah. And I'm like, it really shocked me. I'm like, there's that many at that age that are over drinking in a public place. And, I was talking to my daughter about something the other day, and I can't remember what we were doing, but I was doing something I did not want to do. Like, I didn't want to do it, but I was doing it. And my daughter's like, why are you doing it? And I'm like, peer pressure. Just because I'm 40 does not mean we are not pressured, I'm like, I'm just going to do it just to be done, And then I think, are those ladies drinking because they're wanting to keep up with their friends? Are they drinking because they're unhappy at home? They're putting themselves in a position that's not very smart, not very safe. Downtown Riverside is beautiful, but it is not a very safe area, and the parking is across the street for the Fox Theater. So they're having to leave, and, and so I just think, what is it that makes a person binge drink like that, because they're not even hiding it. They're at a event.
Wow.
Escape from reality.
Yeah.
I think it's you're just releasing working too much, life,
Stress.
Well, what Juan was saying about escaping reality, I think that's kind of why so many homeless people are addicted to alcohol or drugs. But the alcoholism is a huge issue with homelessness. And it's like maybe they were alcoholics and that's why they couldn't keep a job. But what if everything was okay and then they became homeless and then that's why they started to drink, was to escape their reality.
And is that why college students are doing it? They're just starting college. They're not used to, high school is a little bit more hand holding, and college is more of you just do it, but it's due on this day. I'm not going to remind you. And so it's more stress and more, so is it their way of
De-stressing?
Or going to obliviation and not having to think about it?
Yeah. I think it's a mixture of all those qualities or basically environments. Because if you think about it, everything's a pie chart. It's not just one thing that affects. I think it's multiple things. Then you cave, and I think once you cave, I think the result is binge drinking or going into a mental state of depression or doing drugs. So, I think to that, and I do think that it's several factors that really affect people. And I think, unfortunately, I think people just don't seek out help, and a lot of people think that they can mentally control it themselves. But I think it gets to the point where it's like, I think people are resilient and don't want to do it. And I think there's a lot of pride in people, and it's like, I'm not going to go talk to X person about my problems, and the opposite way, that hey, maybe somebody can help talk to me and talk to me through my problems, and maybe we can find common solutions. And
I don't think people realize how addictive alcohol is.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know.
Like they say, it's a disease. Yeah,
I have my friend's husband does not have a driver's license. He's lost it 3 times, and major alcoholic. But he thinks he's fine because he could go. He has his kids every other weekend. Well, he's not allowed to drink when he has his kids. So from Friday to Sunday night, every other week, he could go the whole 3 days and not have a drop of alcohol. But the rest of the time, he's drinking like crazy. He can't keep a job. Da da da. But according to him, he's not an alcoholic because he could go those 3 days without it.
right. Oh, yeah.
So it's like,
I just had a very close friend. You know, I've known her for like 20 years, and she got a divorce for the same reason. He preferred the alcohol. Her kids are grown, everybody's out, and she just says she can handle it no more. He prefers that alcohol, and pretty similar to what you're saying. And he decided that's what he wants.
Yeah.
He doesn't want his marriage of 30-something years. Preferred the alcohol, and there it goes.
Where are we at?
We are exactly at an hour.
Okay.
8:01 to 9:01.
Okay, so gonna wrap it up, and that's
Yeah,
it.
so I thought it was a good discussion. I think for both topics.
Yeah, very, very good. Good group. Very,
And I don't think we're gonna have a problem going the hour.
Yeah, yeah. I was thinking, yeah, because in my other one group we had 7 people, and we had a hard time getting to the hour. This was very much more interesting and to the topic, and I enjoy it very much. So I'm gonna stop the recording now.
Okay.
I just noticed that our papers are due next week.
Yeah.
What papers?